Well, hello and welcome to another episode of SundownSurmisings. This is episode 41. It's February 26th, and PJ is in fact back from assignment like I promised. With new bits of wisdom, we're going to be looking at tonight some real cool passage and a little insight into it. Right? And again, just to remind you, we're doing a new start kind of stories where people turned a corner. Old blossomed into new, life lessons grew, and they began to move on, whether it was a 180-degree turn or a 45 or something, some sort of change at the feet of Jesus prompted them to move on, and that's what we're looking at. So,
I kind of wondered if you would have your guest host replace me permanently because, I was worried about that.
She's a lot cuter, I gotta tell you. Not that. I don't know. There's nowhere to go there. Sorry, there's nowhere to go.
But it's nice to be back together.
Yes, it is.
I really struggled kind of where, you were kind of thinking some ideas. I was kind of struggling, where do we go? Where's the next place we go? And earlier this week, you and I were talking about, and you threw out some thoughts about some people, Gideon being one of them. Right. Just kind of that a new start, a new direction.
Right. And look for that coming up.
Yeah, and so... but I was really impressed with the one that we mentioned, and I dug into it.
Okay.
And actually, one of my favorite pieces of stories together, and the story of Saul.
Okay, so that's where we're going.
Yeah.
So, what story of that?
Well, okay, so Saul is a guy who was part of the church.
Okay, New Testament.
Yeah, New Testament. Okay. Sorry, New Testament. So not King Saul.
Because
gotcha.
That could be a new change.
Yeah.
If he did have a new change, it just went backwards.
Yes, that's right. So anyway, go in the New Testament with Saul, and part of the organization to snuff out, Jesus and the
Jesus followers,
exactly, right. And famous. He stands at the death of a first martyr, which is Stephen, and so we're going to Acts 9. Okay, and we engage our character in Acts 9. Now he has been assigned to continue. So. The Bible, and you may have some insight into this, the Bible doesn't indicate that Saul was a part of murdering Stephen.
He held the coat.
But he certainly was involved. He certainly was a witness. Yeah. And he certainly
whether he picked up rocks or not, so I'm guessing he didn't since he was holding coat.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the blood is on his hands too.
Yes.
And because of his journey or his whatever he's been taught, the direction I sometimes call it the devil's influence. Mm-hmm. He continues on in this murderous way,
thinking he's doing the right thing.
Correct. Right. For the right reasons. And so this story really comes alive. And what I want you to read is 9:1 all the way down to 5, and I'm going to ask you to read through 5, and I'm going to ask you something about the biblical, theological idea of one of the things of verse 5.
9:1 through 5.
Yeah.
I'll be reading from the King James, but again, even as I read from the King James, I'll be kind of paraphrasing as I go along. We'll put the NIV down below. Acts chapter 9, verse 1. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest. So he goes to the top.
Right.
I don't remember if I even noticed that before.
Yeah.
He goes to who's high priest? Who's the one who crucified Jesus?
Caiaphas, isn't it?
Yeah, Caiaphas. He goes to Caiaphas and says, "I need letters of permission to go to the various synagogues and find the people who are in the way, the followers of Christ, and bring them bound to Jerusalem." And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone all around him from heaven, and he fell on his face in the earth and heard a voice saying, "Saul, Saul, why are you trying to hurt me?" And he said, the next part, this is always one of the funniest chapters to me, because you've been blinded by a light from above, and your first question is, well, who are you?
Right,
anyway,
exactly.
Dude, get a clue. And he said, well, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you persecute. It's hard for you to kick against the pricks. Now, that's a reference to ox goad. It's like it would keep the oxen moving forward.
Right.
So basically, Jesus is saying, you're going to find the road that you've chosen a rough road to hoe if you try to keep going against me. I just blinded you from heaven, and we need to have a conversation.
Okay, so one of the things I want to ask you about here in this verse right here, verse 5. So at the beginning, we know that he's murderous threats, is what my Bible says. You know, breathing threats, I'm
going to kill you.
Right. When he says, "Who are you, Lord?" that's capitalized here. Who is he referencing? Is that reference?
I think, again, this is one of, to me, the funniest verses, because I wrestle. It's like, okay, it to me is the same as remember back in, I can't remember the town, but the people were trying to get to Abraham's nephew, Lot's door, right?
Okay.
And the angels blinded them.
Yes.
And then it says they wearied themselves trying to find the door. And I'm thinking, dude, if somebody blinds you, this is a hint.
Don't go by the door.
Yeah, don't go by the door, right? So he is traveling along on his donkey. He gets knocked off, and his first thing is, "Well, who are you?" And I'm thinking, It doesn't really matter, dude, because you're on face down on the ground.
Right.
But he asks, "Who are you, Lord or Master?"
Okay.
And so it's not necessarily an addressing to God, but he's like, "Well, who are you?" And thus the voice comes, "I'm Jesus." And I think that was just sort of like, "I'm sorry, what?" I'm sure he's listening, because everything at that point, his light, everything is blinded. He's lost his eyesight, and his ears are just picking up everything.
Right.
And everybody around him is hearing all this, and they stood speechless, hearing a voice but seeing nobody. So everybody heard it.
Right.
And wow, I never thought of that either.
Yeah.
What happened with them? Because they heard the voice.
Right.
Did they convert? Without,
That's a part of the story, yeah.
Saul, Paul, God had to get his attention with the two before. But these other guys are like, oh, we can take a hint.
There's always a thought I've had is like, how big a truck has God got to drop on you to get your attention? And Paul's a classic example of that. Yeah. Now, there's a reference that when I was reading this and kind of studying this to get ready for our time together, one of the things I was thinking about was, and this is, you're going to know this, and I don't know exactly, I think lots of people sing this. Well, no, it's folks, you probably have sung it at your concerts you've done with your band of brothers you've played with before, but I saw the light.
Oh yeah, we've done that.
Yeah, and I think about, I saw the light, and it's like that idea that this light just blinded by the light. Is another one.
That's true.
Yeah, and it's like that idea that, they're just
blinded by the light with truth and God and right.
Yeah. And so he gets blinded by that, and so we're going to jump ahead. Okay, and then we're going to go and I told you to read who we're going to meet, and then we're going to talk about where they're going to meet at. Okay. So verse 10.
Verse 10. And there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias, and to him the Lord said in a vision, "Ananias," and he said, "I'm here." And the Lord said, "Arise, go into the street, which is called Straight. Ask at the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he's praying." You want to keep going?
No, right there. Okay. So one of the things that's really cool about this story is that Paul's now led for 3 days. He's led by the hand, and for 3 days he's in the city. And what I love about this story is that God sends Ananias to Straight Street.
Yeah.
Now, when we were growing up, there was a lot of talk about you got to go straight.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Turn your life around, go straight.
Right, go to the straight and narrow.
Straight and narrow, yep, or if people refer to, well, you're straight, you're always doing the good things.
Right.
You're about, being the one who
straight shooter.
Exactly.
Always tells the truth.
Always tells the truth. You never deviate one way or the other. And what I love about the story is he sends him to Straight Street, and two things I think is cool about that is that because Paul, sometimes you may not feel this, but sometimes having something old or that old name that surrounds us, we just kind of, it's almost like a maze. It's almost like because you're trying to find value, you're trying to find significance, you're trying to find, or you think that you're supposed to be doing this right, and but I can't believe that Saul felt good. Deep down, you just got to think.
Right, no, I would agree. I would think 3 days of reflection, thinking, believing, absolutely. And he writes on it, later about that people are going to get to the point where they're going to be doing harm, evil, and thinking they're doing God a favor, right? That's one of the things he thinks is a sign of the last times. And he had to be thinking, oh my goodness, I have been playing for the wrong team.
Yeah.
So totally. he's just alone with his thoughts. He can't see anything, so there's nothing. He can just hear. And I would imagine he would be tuning that out. And his mind, from what we know, later, obviously is so brilliant. He has all this detailed stuff in his head.
Right.
And he must have been pouring over it in his head going, oh, wait a second. I remember reading that. Now I understand what it means.
Yeah.
Oh, that prophecy that was pointing Messiah, it meant this. Oh, wow. Isaiah 53, I ignored that for a long time. Oh, this is actually what happened. And he gets a crash course in 3 days of what the people on the road to Emmaus got in a few hours. But because his whole life has to completely disassemble and be reassembled.
Well, and I got to think that Stephen's words, I see the Lord standing at the right hand.
Wow, I didn't think of that, right? And he saw, it says, his face lighted up as an angel.
Yes.
And he's like, wow, he saw the light and was like, I saw the light, and he's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's like amazing.
Oh, wow.
So,
thinking about what he saw, because he would have seen, because he was prosecuting Stephen, he saw that.
Right.
And he's now thinking about that, and it's like, oh my goodness.
Well, that was one citation I wondered about when he says, who are you, Lord? Because, the light, it's like this kind of similarities that are happening for him right now.
Yes. Wow.
So, Paul, and the story goes, you can imagine, and what's so rich about the Bible is that the white space is about, we were talking earlier before we got on screen, is that Anna should be like,
wait, I'm not going there. I've heard about it. He even says, wait, are you sure, Lord? I've heard about this guy. He's this, that, and the other. And God says, I'm sure. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
That to me is a lot of faith right there. Because God says, oh no, I plucked this one from the fire.
Right.
I've saved this one. Yeah, you're right. He was headed straight for the fire. He was headed straight for hell. But he's going to wear my colors now. And I was like, all right.
And what's cool about it is Annas goes to this house and he places his hands. And what I like about the straight street, what I like about this picture is that God sends people to help guide us. Because just as you alluded, all those thoughts it was probably so much din, so much thunder, so much stuff, and really weakening him probably is that weight of what he has done.
Yeah, he has to wait for 3 days to realize, is this permanent?
Right.
I mean, this is, I won't say his penance, but he's like, I've been doing this to God. Can I be forgiven?
Right.
He's really wrestling, and I'm sure praying his heart out of, okay, God, I totally missed it, didn't see it, got it, whatever. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So read for me the verse that becomes new again, and it happens right here, just shortly after that. Go to this man, and it's verse 17.
All right. So Ananias went his way and entered in the house, and putting his hands on him, said, Brother Saul, the Lord, even Jesus.
I love that. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that appeared to you in the way when you came, has sent me that you might receive your sight and be filled with the Holy Ghost.
And then read 18.
And immediately there fell from his eyes as it had been scales, and he received his sight, and immediately rose and was baptized.
And Saul becomes new.
Yeah.
Now his name doesn't happen right here.
No, but
it's on that path.
Right. And again, for those of you who are not sure, Saul actually means, the name Saul means desire, one who's looked for. It's like, this is the guy you want as your friend. This is the guy, it's like, oh. And you think about the first king of Israel, it's who the people desired. It was their heart desire. And Saul was this kind of up and coming. He was obviously influential. He was young. He had all of the boxes ticked off, of this guy's going to be the greatest, whatever, most likely to succeed, right?
Right.
And what he does is he does a little interesting play on words. He keeps the last part of the sound, right? Because it's a single syllable sound in Hebrew and Greek. And he changes a letter.
Yeah.
And it goes from being desired to being something that means little or least, which becomes one of his sayings that he repeats. He's, I'm the least of these, or the least of the apostles. I'm the least of all these. And he says this many times in his ministry and in his letters. And so with that just little word change, right? He could have had a whole new word, but he has just a one phonetic part. It's not even the whole thing. It's just one syllable, right? No, he just changes the first part of the syllable, and he goes, "This is actually who I am."
Yeah.
And it totally reshapes his life. And we often think of getting a name like, think about Jacob. He went from a bad name, what we would regard as a bad name, to a great name.
Yeah.
And everyone has been like that. But Paul goes, you know what? I've had that name, and that name is now, as he says, the world's riches I now regard as refuse, and what the world regards as madness, or again, I'm paraphrasing, that's the pinnacle for me.
Yeah.
This is his constant reminder. And so it's kind of a reverse name change, and yet his life is so much more on this straight and narrow road.
One of the huge takeaways from Paul's experience right here, and then he goes into write incredible letters and things that we are encouraged by in the New Testament. But one of the things that he claims still to be in charge of is, he says, I'm the chief of sinners.
Yes.
And he identifies it. And I always thought that was like, hey, how can he claim that? Because I've not always been good.
Right.
How can he claim it? But it's like, I think I've learned as I was studying this, is the recognition of I'm the chief of this, and I'm little now, but because of Jesus. He goes, I'm chief, but I'm still forgiven. I'm still loved.
His life was a constant testament to God's grace, and I don't think he ever forgot that. It was a constant reminder with his eyesight or whatever else the affliction he ends up dealing with repeatedly he talks about. But he could say absolutely, oh, God can forgive you.
Yeah.
I was actually killing him. And if God can save me, that's a powerful testimony.
That is.
It's like, I know where you're at. I know you think you're on the last leg and there's nothing you can do. Well, there is nothing you can do, but it's a good thing because God's already done it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about, right? And that became his passion. His name became his, as feared as Saul was, the name Saul, the name Paul becomes that much revered.
Yeah, absolutely.
From being feared to revered. So, hey, thank you for joining us again. February 26th, our last episode in February. Next week, we're in January, March. I panicked. I couldn't think what it was. I was like, what's the next? I think it's like...
They all run together.
Yeah.
It's all
I think it's March 5. Yeah, it's all been running together for episode 42. And we're going to look at a new story, an old story, but a new twist on another famous early apostle who gets a name change. This one directly from Christ. We're going to look at it. But thank you for joining us at Sundown Surmisings, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.